I'm breaking out of my usual pattern here and will be diving deep about a brand that's not based here in the Philippines. This particular brand triggered my interest as to how it has established a cult like following all over the world. Despite it only being easily accessible in the United States and via secondary online marketplaces, if you ask any of your women friends, I'm sure you'll find someone who's a big fan of Glossier. In fact, the first time I've heard of Glossier was through one of my friends who shared with me how big of a fan she is of this company, that despite it being new in the beauty space, has gained a formidable following. I did a quick Google search and found out that the brand was only launched around 2014, yet the company is now valued at $1.2 billion, doubling its revenue in 2018 to $100 million and adding over 1 million customers. At one point, they even had a 10,000 person waiting list for two of its products, so calling it impressive is a bit of an understatement. And this is why I wanted to study Glossier. What's up with this beauty brand? What are they doing right? And how did it get to where it is today? The brand's origins can be traced back to its 33-year-old founder and CEO, Emily Weiss. When Emily Weiss was still in school, to earn some money during her free time, she used to babysit for neighbors. One time, it so happens to be that her neighbor worked at Ralph Lauren. Being a lover of all things fashion and seeing the opportunity here, she figured how great it would be if she could intern at Ralph Lauren, and so she asked her neighbor if this was possible. In an interview, Emily shares how she asked for the internship. She said that she was all like, "I like your kid and all, but what I really want is to work at Ralph Lauren." Well, so it happened. She was only 15 years old then, but that didn't stop her from proving to everyone what she was willing to do to make it in this industry. She would commute from Connecticut to New York that summer, and when it was time to head back to school in the fall, she convinced her parents to allow her to play hooky during collections at Ralph Lauren. So I guess early on, we see glimpses of Emily Weiss's work ethic. She said she learned that she had to be many things, that she needed to be a sponge, not being resistant to change and just learning new things as she went along. She understood that she needed to earn the right to be there. Weiss made quite an impression, and it came to a point when Whitney Fairchild, who was the senior design director that time, called Amy Astley, who was the editor-in-chief of Teen Vogue. She said, "Okay, I have never done this before, but I have someone you really have to meet." Amy Astley describes Emily Weiss as having an incredible style and taste, and that she was the type of person who just wanted to work and preferred being around adults. During the time that she was working as an intern at Teen Vogue, there was this popular TV show from MTV called The Hills. The Hills was a reality TV show, and in that show, one of their characters interned at Teen Vogue. Now Emily, being a warm and very hardworking person, the MTV people loved her, and so she briefly appeared on the show. She worked alongside one of the characters, Lauren Conrad, and was known as the Super Intern. I guess being the Super Intern wasn't that hard for Emily Weiss to portray since that was kind of who she really was. She thought that she could have probably appeared in more episodes, but she knew that she didn't want to be a reality TV star. She knew it was a trap, and talking about her boyfriends on TV wasn't the path she was gonna take. And so, after her time at Teen Vogue, she worked at Condé Nast on a series of assistant jobs. She was working with stylists and traveling for shoots. Let's just say that she was getting more and more exposure as to what was happening behind the scenes of these fashion magazines. Learning a lot from these experiences, she asked Sarah Brown, Vogue's then beauty director, if she can contribute an article on the magazine's website. She wanted to write about the self-tanner that was recommended to her by Victoria's Secret model Doutzen Cruz. Apparently, during a shoot, Weiss complimented the model's tan and then Cruz shared with her the one that she uses. Weiss tried it herself and absolutely loved it. And so she wanted to talk about this product and the experience of using it. She discovered how much she loved writing about her experience and about beauty in general. And because of her current profession, she was actually in a great position of doing so. She took full advantage of this and put her newly found passion to productive use. And so, in the summer of 2010, as she was enjoying the view of the beautiful Connecticut beach, sitting with her family, she shared with them that she was going to start a blog. Through the blog, she wanted to share the real-world beauty routines of the very fashion icons that most women follow. Just like the self-tanner that Doutzen Cruz recommended, she thought of how amazing it felt when you get these insider tips and secrets from the very celebrities that influenced your style. This may not seem like a far-fetched thing to do for a blog or a magazine, but at that time, sharing beauty secrets weren't really encouraged. It wasn't really a cool thing to do. This was one of the things that Into the Gloss was going to change. And so, Wise took action. She purchased a $750 used camera and bought the intothegloss.com domain. She was still working at that time, but she devoted 3 hours of her day to writing. She'd be writing from 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. before she went to work, a schedule she'd stick to for about a year. By September, her first blog post was published, and her goal was to launch at least 3 stories every week. One of the columns that launched Into the Gloss's popularity was The Top Shelf, where Wise would interview celebrities, high-profile women, and just really famous people. She would go through their bathroom cabinets to see what products they use and find out what their grooming routines were, all in a personal and detailed approach. I've read a couple of those The Top Shelf articles as I did my research, and one of them featured actress Lea Seydoux. She had so many products, like there were 2 tabletops of products plus her sink, which was also full of beauty products. And this is one of the things that Into the Gloss wanted to change. Wise mentioned that women had this tendency to be so nonchalant about how much time and energy it takes to look the way they look. That there was this air of having an effortless beauty type of look, even though it did require a lot of effort behind the scenes. Into the Gloss wanted to change all that. What the Top Shelf column did was to make women understand that there was no need to pretend that their beauty preparation was effortless, because even the most beautiful celebrities spend so much time and effort on preparing themselves. The more the blog exposed what the real-world routines were of these celebrities, the more it made everyday women comfortable with their own personal routines. It made the blog's audience feel that whether you use 100 products and spend hours preparing, or whether you just used one product and spend a minute, what matters is that you're comfortable in your own skin, because beauty isn't a one-size-fits-all type of thing. And so, the blog showed photos of these messy tabletops full of products. It just looked real and authentic. Like it wasn't a professional shoot sponsored by a brand. It had this voyeuristic feel which brings out its unadulterated authenticity. And Wise did this with celebrities such as Kim Kardashian, Karlie Kloss, Bobby Brown, and even David Beckham. This had a huge impact on the blog's readers because it felt like they were sharing insider beauty secrets with these celebrities. Unsurprisingly, by early 2012, the site had more than 200,000 unique visitors per month. By May of 2016, that number had swelled to 1.3 million visitors every single month. Now, it's important to note that while Wise was working on this blog, interviewing women, it allowed her to understand women better, particularly their relationship with beauty brands. She discovered that the beauty industry is dominated by a couple of Goliath brands, oftentimes acquiring these smaller boutique brands that had potential to grow, making them even more larger. So she became more aware of how these giant beauty brands were oftentimes dictating what products women should and shouldn't use, or which combination of products they needed to use in order to reach a certain standard of beauty. It made her feel like these brands had lost their personality along the way, like they didn't care that much about what she wanted and that they were simply dictating and not listening. Through feedback she was receiving from Into the Gloss, she realized that women felt the same way. And so, she started thinking about the brand that she wished existed. What if there was a beauty brand that put real women in the driving seat? A brand that put women's narratives at the forefront? A brand that gave them a voice and a platform? She was already listening to women through Into the Gloss, and she knew what type of products they were asking for. Now, what if she can create a company that created these very products? And as a result, in 2013, she decided to launch her own beauty and skincare company. Wise started getting to work to make this brand come to life, and the first thing she needed was seed money. Because unlike the blog, which only required around $1,000 to launch, she calculated that she needed at least $1 million to get started. So she approached venture capitalists interested in investing in a beauty company, which, surprisingly for Wise, there weren't that many. She said that it was bewildering as to why investors weren't really looking into this space, despite the fact that it is a multi-billion-dollar market. But that didn't stop her. Keep in mind that at this point, the company had no name and had no products yet. You can just imagine how disastrous this would be if you made your pitch in Shark Tank without any proof of revenue or even just a prototype of the product. Plus, Wise shared that she had no idea what she was doing. Well, mainly because she didn't have a business background, because she was an art major. All Emily Wise had was a vision that the beauty industry can do better. She understood that there was an audience that's begging to be taken care of. And so out of the 12 VCs that she approached, only one invested. This one venture capitalist is Kirsten Green of Forerunner Ventures, one of the few female venture VCs in the space. This Kirsten Green also did the same thing to Warby Parker, Dollar Shave Club, and Jet.com. So yeah, she kinda knows what she's doing. Wise then just made a list of what she needed to launch the company. Quoting from her interview with a cut, I wrote out, here are all the things we need to launch. Website, chemist, office space, and then I just checked them off one by one. Put all the balls in the air, got pregnant with Glossier, incubated, gave birth to 4 beautiful products. Glossier Soothing Face Mist, Priming Moisturizer, Balm.com, and Perfecting Skin Tint Foundation. The success of these products wouldn't have been possible without one crucial element. And this is probably the most valuable asset of this business, the Glossier brand. Fortunately, one of Emily Wise's strengths is in the creative field. Brand is really important. It's kind of everything, Wise said. Right from the beginning, Wise knew how important a role branding will make in the success of Glossier, and so she has been meticulous in the development of the Glossier visual identity, as well as the experiences that reinforce what the brand stands for. From the signature washed out Glossier pink to the look and feel for all the products, messaging, and marketing, Wise has been giving this a lot of attention, and so far, all this effort has been well rewarded. Because after reading several reviews about Glossier's products, a common feedback is that the products are okay, but they're definitely not industry-changing. And considering its relatively high price point, you get what you pay for, but definitely not something that's breaking new ground. So it's clear that the true value comes from the Glossier brand. And the brand that I'm talking about goes beyond its visual identity and look. It involves what the brand means to people and what impact it makes when you associate yourself with Glossier. It all starts with what the brand means to its audience. You see, Glossier is known for the effortless French girl type of look. The brand understands that not all of its customers have time to go through rigorous makeup routines. For instance, you're not supposed to use brushes while using Glossier products because they're meant to be applied by hand, effortless enough to be slapped on while you're in the car if necessary. It's that level of effortless. And unlike giving off the impression of trying really hard with layers of makeup, being effortlessly beautiful has some coolness to it. And if it means that all it's gonna take to get yourself to that point is to use some of Glossier's products, it makes you feel like the brand has allowed you to finally be the type of woman you've always wanted to be, the cool girl that's effortlessly beautiful. And their beauty products, well, they're not really meant to be noticed at all, so it kinda gives you the barely there type of beauty. Glossier has doubled down on this positioning, and they're winning because we're in a period where individuality and each one's own uniqueness is highly valued. Glossier's brand is built on this very idea, and so unsurprisingly, they're winning the 18 to 35-year-old market, which is a sought-after audience for brands. So far, based on the feedback online, it's a hit or a miss for women. If you're into the effortless look, you're going to love Glossier. If that doesn't work for you, you're probably going to think that it's just a waste of money because you're spending on something that you don't even notice. But then again, the brand lives on the idea of skin first, makeup second, which is a clear message of what they're here for. That their products exist to play up your natural features that make you uniquely beautiful instead of masking your flaws. Their website says that their products were made to bring out your best before reaching for makeup. Then makeup becomes the fun part, not the fix, as it should be. The products are there to nourish your skin first for a much better and glowing version of yourself. Best part is, with social media, they get to easily spread this message, which is one of the main reasons why they're winning. Well, that's because Glossier is a digital-first brand. They're part of the new wave of direct-to-consumer brands. Brands that don't deal with Sephora or other big box stores for distribution. And because they remove the middlemen, they're able to earn more from each product sold. And by earning more, they get to reinvest this into a new age marketing system that's actually a lot more than meets the eye. You see, Glossier is doing the no marketing type of marketing. Meaning, the marketing is there, but it doesn't feel like it. It's that seamless. And I think that's when marketing is most effective, when you don't even know that they're doing it, but slowly, deep inside, it's winning you in. Because unlike the traditional banner ads type of marketing, Glossier has built a brand that sells itself. So how does it work? First off, the community. Glossier's social media pages features a lot of their own customers. Women take photos of themselves along with their Glossier products. They simply have to use the Glossier hashtag and then they get featured on the brand's own page. This type of user-generated content is one of the many ways that Glossier grows its community and democratizes beauty, as they say it. They turn their customers into influencers because by definition, each one is an influencer since each one has influence over their friends and family. Wise takes full advantage of this strategy because she understands that women no longer shop based on what brands say, but on what their friends recommend. I mean, when you see a friend being featured using a brand's products, you do see how it makes you feel safe. Safe enough to try it out yourself. And Glossier takes this even further with their rep system. They've handpicked influencers to become representatives or reps of the brand. Each Glossier rep is given their own business cards and their own personal page on the Glossier website through which people can buy products from. If a purchase is made through their page, the reps get a commission or a product credit. Kind of the same way affiliate marketing works, which is being used by many direct-to-consumer brands. Glossier claims that their reps are not chosen based on the number of followers they have, but are chosen based on whether they share the same values. Well, you be the judge of this statement because there has been feedback that at one point it felt like they were just choosing anyone because it was starting to feel like there were too many reps hard selling to people. But anyway, their system has evolved and has improved since then. And if you're a top producing rep, you get more than just monetary compensation because they have these incentive trips where top reps are invited to their headquarters in New York to spend time with the team. And this system wouldn't have been possible without social media, which has been key in the growth of Glossier. But the thing about social media is that it not only allows testimonials that'll help your brand, it also opens the doors to frustrated customers to share their complaints about your products. But rather than censor these complaints, Glossier uses this as feedback and as a stepping stone towards the development of an even better product. Allowing women to freely share both the good and the bad about Glossier builds a lot of trust, which I guess has been working out well for the brand, especially since brands like Glossier thrive on authenticity and giving its audience a voice. Speaking of authenticity, Glossier took a page from what Wise did with her top shelf column in Into the Gloss. Glossier's photos are taken with iPhones rather than professional DSLR cameras. It makes it all feel authentic, natural, and more relatable. Kinda makes you feel like it's the type of photos that everyone can take, even you. And sure enough, Glossier's audience take a lot of photos of themselves with the Glossier products that they use. The brand understands how valuable user-generated content is, and so they make it easy for their customers to do this. And by easy, I mean irresistible. You know how people just find it hard to not take a photo of their Starbucks drink every time they buy? Glossier has the same effect on its audience, and it's all part of the brand's no marketing type of marketing strategy. For instance, when you buy one of their products, they come with this resealable pink bubble wrap pouch along with graffiti doodle stickers. Wise hoped that customers would plaster the stickers all over their stuff and then take those photos up to social media, once again doing all the marketing for Glossier. They even have a simple but clever branded hashtag campaign in Glossier Pink, where they ask users to take a photo and tag the brand when they happen to see everyday items that have the same shade of the washed out Glossier Pink. A clever move because it's fun and easy thing to do, and it slowly associates the brand with everyday things that people are exposed to. Glossier also uploads phone wallpapers weekly. Knowing that their audience's eyes are glued to their screens most hours of the day, it is valuable real estate for them. So in exchange for signing up to their newsletter, you get a handful of free items such as recipes, music, and of course, new phone wallpapers uploaded weekly. And guess what? At least 50,000 people download these wallpapers every single week. Needless to say, Glossier can easily be categorized as having reached cult brand status. Brands that have a cult-like following is kind of the goal because it's at this level when you start seeing people defend your brand for you when there's negative publicity against the brand. And as we were doing our research, we were going through Reddit threads and YouTube videos of women reviewing Glossier products. And what amazed me was the outrage from Glossier's audience when the products were misunderstood. Like, there were a couple of videos where the lady in the video who was reviewing the Glossier product was saying that it was a bit too expensive for something that you won't really notice on her face. She complained that it has very little coverage or it doesn't really cover her freckles very well. And then when I went through the comment section, the top comments were from Glossier users saying that, well, that's the point of the brand. It's for the barely there type of look. And the point of Glossier is to bring out your natural beauty and not to hide behind makeup. And then it's funny because after this negative review of Glossier's products, one of the top comments says, "Uh-oh, Glossier fans will come after you. They're hardcore about that stuff." Like, they were aware that this review will summon the Glossier army, and that's what was actually happening. Glossier proudly talks about the strength of its community, but seeing this for myself online, in the wild, it's great to see, and it really is enviable for many brands because it's not easy to gain hardcore superfans. I think it's comparable to Supreme, the streetwear apparel company. Supreme isn't the type of brand that everyone wants to use, but those who do understand what it stands for, what it's about, and like everything about Supreme, they'll go out of their way to defend the brand and wait hours to get their exclusive products. But unlike Supreme, which thrives on exclusivity due to scarcity, Glossier is inclusive and accessible to the masses, yet it still carries an air of exclusivity because of the brand and what it stands for. And yes, just like Supreme, people are also eager to get their hands on new Glossier products. In fact, at one point, they had a waiting list of over 10,000 orders. Emily Weiss did say that I wanted to create a beauty company whose sweatshirt I wanted to wear because it's so much more than just a beauty product. And that thing actually happened when they launched their $60 sweatshirt, and people went crazy over it when supermodel Carly Kloss, who's a big fan of Glossier, posted it on her Instagram page. Glossier has leaned in on this and actually launched Glossy Wear, a limited edition clothing line that includes a hoodie in the classic Glossier washed out pink, a baseball cap, and a duffel bag. Glossier proves that today, it's not about the square footage of your store location, it's all about your follower count on social media. And most importantly, it's about having an audience that pays attention to your brand. Millions of followers don't matter when they don't care about what you have to say. And so, Glossier continues to leverage the Into the Gloss blog as their way of making beauty a two-way conversation. They continue to get feedback from their community there. Feedback that they actually take action on. Weiss shares that the formula for their Milky Jelly Cleanser came out from a post titled, "What's Your Dream Cleanser?" The blog post encouraged readers to answer the question, and with more than 382 comments sharing their ideal cleanser, after about a year, Milky Jelly was released. This is the kind of magic you get from a brand like Glossier. And unsurprisingly, in March, the company raised an additional $100 million in a funding round that valued the company at $1.2 billion. Not bad for a 5-year-old startup that was born from a beauty blog. And according to Glossier founder Emily Weiss, they're just getting started. And that's about it. Now you know about the brand origin story of Glossier. My name is Chris, and I'll be back next time for another episode of Brand Origins. If you enjoyed this show, it'll mean a lot if you can tell your friends about Brand Origins. You can also talk to us on Twitter. We're at Brand Origins FM. Once again, thanks for watching another episode of Brand Origins.